I feel like one of the questions we get most often asked by our students is, when am I ever going to use this in real life? In today's episode, we're going to help answer that question with the help of Caroline's expertise on project-based assessments. We're going to be talking about how to take real-world problems and apply it to the math that students are learning. With that, let's get started. Welcome to Solving for the Undefined podcast. I'm your host, Johanna, founder of Miss Kuiper's Classroom, the place that equips teachers in creating a healthy math classroom where students can thrive, no matter their academic abilities. But it's not always about the numbers, and that's why I'm here, bringing you the formulas to solve your problems, math and otherwise, plus strategies on cultivating that necessary math mindset. And that's what you can count on. All right, hello. Welcome to a brand new episode. Today we have Caroline on here, and we are excited to talk about some project-based assessments. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? So, who are you? What was your journey as an educator?
Yeah, I'm right now in my 4th year of teaching. I actually started as an elementary school teacher, that's what I went to college for. And then I realized when I was student teaching that I didn't love that grade level. And so I got a job as a math intervention tutor and loved it. And I loved working with that demographic of kids where they aren't necessarily special ed, but they need the extra support and the small group environment. And so I decided to change completely and go into math ed, and I've just loved it, really.
That's really cool. I had a very similar experience of I went to college and it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I wanted to go to that college because I had a scholarship from them. And eventually I had to declare a major, and I fell in love with math education, and here we are today.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, how did you get into project-based assessments? Where did that come from?
So when I first started at my first school, we had 80-minute class periods, and I was teaching mostly 9th grade Algebra 1. And so a lot of it, honestly, was just me trying to fill the time, because 80 minutes is such a long time for students to be sitting there and just doing math worksheet after worksheet and taking tests. I was like, there's got to be a better way to test than just repetitive problems. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then I realized all of the benefits that it has for my students. And so, yeah.
Nice. So 80-minute class periods seems like such a long time. How many class periods did you guys have in one day?
4.
Okay.
It was semester mostly. So most of the classes, it was 4 classes every day for a semester, and then you'd switch. Mm-hmm. With Algebra 1, they broke it up for the foundation so that the kids got a solid foundation of Algebra 1. So it was 80 minutes a day, every day for the entire year.
Wow, that is a lot.
It was a lot, yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what is a project-based assessment.
So it's really just taking what they're learning and applying it to real life scenarios. And so there's word problems and real world applications, but with a project-based assessment, it's more kind of hands-on, and they're making decisions about what is going to happen within the scenario that they're given. And so it's a lot about choice and critical thinking and defending their decisions. So it's a bit deeper than just doing word problems.
Mm-hmm. Could you give us an example, your most recent project-based assessment? What was it?
Yeah, so I actually just updated one of mine today, and it's a landscape design project. So it's for solving inequalities, and basically their client comes to them. They have a $75,000 budget, and they need to design a pool, a patio, and gardens for them. And so they have to use that budget, figure out how much they're going to allocate for each, and then write inequalities, to figure out how big everything can be, what they want it to look like, and then ultimately bring it back to the client and with their final product.
That sounds really cool. How do your students feel about those types of projects? Because I know maybe before they came into your classroom, they had a teacher who would just give like a normal test or a quiz. So what was like the adjustment for students to have like a project-based assessment over maybe like a regular test?
So I usually don't do them like entirely in place of tests. So I'll usually have both, or I'll do like a quiz and the project-based assessment so that they get full ways to show their understanding. I think that's a really important part of it. And I also like that they can use their resources and their notes and or work in a group for these assessments. I don't think that really answered your question.
That's okay. It was good to know that like it isn't replacing entirely maybe like the traditional like quiz or test, but it's another way, like you said, for kids to show what they've learned, and it gives them multiple, not only just opportunities, but maybe one where one of those different types works better for however they've learned.
Right. And the first one is always challenging for them just because they're not used to doing it. And so really it's just a lot of practice and modeling and getting them used to like defending their decisions and figuring out the problems on their own.
Yeah. I like within that project-based assessment, it's not only like do the work, but you have them justify their decisions, because I feel that has a very like applicable sense of like when you have a job or if you're getting your master's degree or whatever, you have to defend your like, is it a dissertation? Like defend your ideas and what you have. And so that's also giving them extra skills that they will need throughout their life outside of school as well.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
I think that's really cool. So, what are the components of a good project-based assessment?
I would say making it relevant to something that they might actually use in their life. And so, like, obviously not all of our students are going to be landscape designers, but it kind of is giving them different ideas of how math is actually used, making it, and along those same lines, making it like creative, where they can do the math piece and then do like the creative piece where they're actually putting something together. I think another key piece of it is having like reflection questions. So you did this math, but what does it actually mean? What are your variables representing? And like, why is it important that you got these answers for your client or whatever the scenario is?
I'm trying to like think of, because you gave the landscaping design example. What other ones have you done?
I've done like planning a trip. There's like a whole bunch of different scenarios within that where they are planning their family vacation. For like factoring, we do, in polynomials, we do like a garden. And so they have to like find area and perimeter using polynomial operations and then like answer questions based on that. A lot of it, especially with like polynomials, you can do with geometry, which is really cool. And so it's like kind of combining both of those things that they've learned over the last few years.
Nice. And it's giving like the math another type of application for it with like polynomials in geometry as well.
Right.
I'm interrupting today's episode to ask you a vital question. Do you have the tools in your classroom for student success? Well, wonder no more, because I have a way for you to check your work. My new guide, 7 Math Teacher Must-Haves for Student Success, has the top 7 items you need in your classroom. From classroom staples to manipulatives that are often missed, this checklist will ensure that your students have a successful school year. Additionally, each item shows the best budget and splurge options. Download the 7 Math Teacher Must-Haves for Student Success after listening to today's episode by going to misskiper.com/guide. You've touched on it a little bit already, but what makes it more beneficial than a standard quiz or test?
So again, like I said, being able to use their resources. So that's a huge thing, especially for the students that really struggle with taking tests. Being able to use their notes, honestly, like use the internet to get ideas and things like that, so that they can show that they understand even with these resources. And now you can look up pretty much anything. And so a lot of it is just teaching them how to figure out how to use your resources to help you. Because when I first started this, like at the beginning of this year, I had students that were like, well, I don't even know how much a pool would cost. Like, how would I know that? And I'm like, well, did you Google it yet? They're like, oh, wait, yeah, that's probably a good idea. So just getting them to be a little bit more independent, I think, is important. And then also the reflective questions. It's a lot easier to use those in the project-based assessments than in a regular test because it gives it more relevance.
So then how often do you give these project-based assessments? Because I know you said it doesn't fully replace standard quizzes or tests. So how often do you use project-based assessments?
Usually like once per unit. So it's usually either before the test or after the test, kind of culmination of everything that they've done in the unit and having them apply it to that. And it is worth pretty much the same as like a test grade.
And so how long does it take students to complete one of these project-based assessments?
Depending on the class period, usually and the group of students, usually 3 to 4 days.
Okay. Nice.
Depending if they are expected to do it at home or not, which I usually don't have them do.
That's nice that it takes a longer set of time too, because it gives them a chance to think about it, work on it, go home, and it's in the back of their mind too. So it gives them more time to reflect on it and then come back with new ideas. Because I know for me, if I'm in the middle of a project, if I step away and go do something else, that's when I have my ideas or my aha moments, and then I can come back in and rethink about things and continue on. It doesn't lead to as much brain fatigue that way.
And it's nice when they are expecting it, so they know these next 3 days this is what we're going to be working on. So then they just come in and we go over a few things, and then they're able to just get right to work on it.
That's awesome. So within this, how would you suggest if teachers wanted to start using this in their classrooms, how would you suggest they get started with them?
So I would definitely start by just introducing word problems and kind of modeling those regularly so that when they get to the independent piece of the project-based assessment, they have a better idea of how to go about solving those problems, because it would be hard to go right from worksheet test to a project-based assessment without having seen any of that and developing any of the skills.
And so that first one they give, what structures did you put in place during that first one to help students kind of acclimate to this new idea?
I think using groups is really helpful so that they can work together. I also add in a lot of prompting questions. So defining variables, what are you trying to figure out? Let's look at the big picture and try to see where we're going. I also think it's really important to kind of chunk them up. So have part 1 today, tomorrow you're going to work on part 1. The day after that you're going to work on part 2, and then this is what you need to have for your final draft, or whatever it is that they need to have at the end. Because that's what I notice a lot is you hand the student this packet with all of these directions, they look at it and they are just what the heck is this? I have no idea what to do. Yeah, super overwhelming. And so kind of scaffolding it and putting it into parts makes it a lot easier for them to comprehend.
Nice. I could definitely see the chunking of it really helping students focus in on one part of it and not get overwhelmed by the seemingly massiveness of one big project.
Yeah.
And how do you find that working with a group can help like their overall understanding of math and like with the added social piece?
I think that the collaboration is really important. There's a very thin line between like effectively collaborating and then just like relying on one person in the group to do all of the heavy lifting and then everybody else kind of just follows. And so that's definitely a challenge that teachers kind of have to manage and put expectations for, because otherwise it wouldn't be beneficial for the groups. Mm-hmm. But I do think when they're like sharing ideas and figuring things out together, it's super beneficial. And it's also another skill that they need to have once they leave high school, being able to work with people, especially people that they don't usually work with.
Yes, I definitely agree on that. I use groups regularly within my classroom, and one of the things I do is I do it every day, and every day they have a new random group of people that they are going to be working with. And I think, like you said, it gives them that ability to learn to work with people that they might not normally choose to work with, because like when you go to a job, you don't get to choose your coworkers. And so it gives them that practice of working with people. How do you interact with people? How do you coexist and work on a project together, breaking up responsibilities and coming out with a complete product in the end?
Yeah.
So what are some resources that could help teachers begin the process of using project-based assessments in their classroom?
So I recently, within the last year, found a website called Open Up Resources. And so it's from 6 to 12 for math. And it is basically a lot of discovery-based learning. And it has really good real-world applications. And just kind of taking those and making them and beefing them up a bit, I found to be really helpful. Like the process that I go through usually when I'm like creating them or like updating them is I'll take an idea or like a real world application from the textbook and then kind of add on to it. And so I actually have a starter kit for project-based assessments for teachers that want to kind of start with an idea and go all the way to a finished product, I guess, of a project-based assessment. And it goes through like what the standards are, what your objectives are, what kind of questions you want asking your students, and kind of planning the whole thing out to be a bit more intentional in what you want the students to get out of those projects.
Awesome. And where can they find that resource from you?
That they can find it on my website. So if they go to boldlyinspiredcurriculum.com and then go to the blog, it's in there. It's also in the math resources section. Yeah.
Sweet. I will also link it down in the show notes if you want to check that out. So I always ask this in every single episode, any episode that I do with another person. So what is your favorite math joke or pun?
Okay, so one that always makes me laugh is the joke that's like, dear algebra, stop asking us to find your ex. She's not coming back. And don't ask why.
That's awesome.
I think it's just funny every time I see it.
That's great. I really like that too. Awesome. So where can people find you on socials and stuff?
So I'm mostly on Instagram at boldly.inspired.curriculum. I have my blog, which I have linked up to my Instagram. That's pretty much it. Those are my two main kind of socials that I use consistently.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to teach us more about project-based assessments and how we can use them to benefit our students in the classroom. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. To find all the links and resources to things talked about in this episode, head on over to MissKuipersClassroom.com and click on podcast.